And there it is, 7 o'clock here on the West Coast. So yet again, good morning to everyone. Good day, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for coming together to practice together, to share in the Dharma together. And we'll sit in meditation, but I want to give you a teaser, a trailer for what I'd like to work through this week, which is an unusual practice, a lesser known practice drawn from the Satipatthana Sutta, the sutta in which we are encouraged to establish mindfulness in a number of different ways, a number of different aspects of our lives. And this is a teaching called by various names. This week I'm calling it the six sense spheres, teaching about how everything, every way we interact with the world, our world of experience, is mediated by six senses, the five senses that are familiar to us, and then the sixth sense of the mind, which of course plays such an important role in Buddhist practice. I had the great good fortune to teach with a colleague of mine, Andrea Castillo, in Medellin, Colombia last week. And we taught about the six sense species, and we found it a really wonderful exploration, and I hope to share some of what we found this week. At any rate, this is a practice that lies in a key place in the Satipatthana Sutta, sort of a pivotal place, and although less familiar, is a critically important practice in our practice. And I'll have a lot more to say about that over the course of the next few days. But let's prepare our minds for sharing in the Dharma by sitting together for half an hour. I look forward to that, and I look forward to talking more about the six sense species practice, or six sense spheres practice, as I'll call it this week, starting about 7:30. I'll begin with a little guidance that I think will be helpful in introducing the six sense spheres practice. So find yourself in a comfortable spot. Sort of retake your meditation posture and the frame of mind that you find supportive for your meditation practice. When I first close my eyes, it's a practice of mine, bring my eyes down. If that feels comfortable, I invite you to do the same. And notice that as we do so, there's a gentle and important rebalancing that happens each time we do this, bringing our attention sort of from this very important visual sphere into our inner lives, the inner world. Rebalance is bringing our from the head down to the body. We rebalance as well by connecting with the breathing as it happens naturally. The breath is naturally balanced. One of the reasons we find connecting with it so supportive is that the breath balances itself without any need for us to intervene, and with exceptions. Medical conditions like apart, we can find in the breath a comfortable place to be at rest, to be in equilibrium, to be in balance. Every time we return to the breathing in the center of our experience, it's an opportunity to rebalance, to feel the natural rebalancing that's present there. All we need to do is keep connecting with it. Coming back over and over again, that's the practice. So we never need to feel frustrated when we find the mind's gotten all tightened up around something that's coming at us today, something that happened yesterday or 10 years ago, something we imagine may happen in the future. No problem. The natural course of our practice is just to keep opening back up, or keep returning to the breath in the center, or to here and now, finding there the natural balance that may elude us when the mind is off doing the mind's work. And for this half an hour and preparation for the teachings to be shared this week, we can notice that the breathing is a way in which we are in contact with the physical, the material world. There's a teaching available about the way we interact through the world, the sensory world, the world we know through our senses, the only world we know, right here in the breathing. In the breathing, we make tactile contact using the sense of touch or benefiting from the sense of touch with the outside world. And we do so in a way that's comfortable, that typically is pretty free of attachment or clinging. We need the breath more than anything. And yet we can sit comfortably with something we need, that the body needs, something we rely on for our very survival. And yet we can be here comfortably without clinging to the breath. We can experience that balance of the breathing, the comfort of the breathing, even the pleasure, the pleasantness of the breathing, without getting all wrapped up in it. Somehow the breath helps us be free in the way we interact with the world. We can enjoy it. We can benefit from it. We can need it. We can want it. And yet we can do so in a way that's comfortable, easeful, peaceful. It doesn't have desirous attachment. It doesn't have clinging in it. The Buddha reminds us at various places that this pleasantness, this pleasure of the meditation isn't to be feared or pushed away. In fact, it's to be cultivated. It's part of the path. And one of the reasons that's so is because this is a pleasantness we can enjoy, doesn't depend on external conditions. It's free of clinging and attachment. And we get to rest in this wonderful space every time we meditate, every time we come back to the breath. I like to come back to the breath with an inner sense of inner sense of here again, here and now again. So this is the practice, that back home again, here and now, free in the breath, free in the breath's balance. This is the practice. So each time we return to the breath, we have this lovely opportunity to rest in the natural balance of the breathing. Wherever we're returning from, the mind may be tight around a worry, a memory, thinking about the future, thinking about the past. Taking our time, we can return to the breath with ease, gently, and we can notice in the breathing that it's simple, uncomplicated, slow, and balanced in a way that the other worlds we inhabit, where the mind's very active, aren't. And we can appreciate all the mind does for us, and yet we can create this place of rest in our experience in the breathing. And as we're here with the breathing, this way of being with experience, touching the breathing, noticing, accompanying the breath, without being attached, without pushing away, without pulling close. The simple touch of our world with the external world that the breath gives us. This way of being free in experience. So can we be in all the other senses that accompany us in the world. And that's what we'll explore this week. How can we be in this world of experience and keep in the flow of it without stopping the flow of it, enjoying the flow of it? How can we inhabit this world of ours in a way that's free? So, welcome again, everyone. Good morning to you, good day to you, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming together to practice together, to support one another's practice. And this week, I'd like to share the teaching on the six sense spheres. That's sort of difficult to say. Sometimes this is a teaching called the six sense bases. And I'll give you a little sense today of the context for this teaching, and also tell you a little bit about where we're going, and encourage people to stay around till Friday, when there will be time to sort of arrive at the heart of this teaching. It seems to me that the teaching on the six sense bases, which is a teaching about how we interact with the world in the only way we can through the six senses we have, the five traditional senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch, and the sixth sense that Buddhists add, the mind and the way the mind experiences the world through objects of the mind. And I hadn't thought about it before. I think I mentioned at the outset that I had the opportunity to teach on this theme last week in Medellin, Colombia, with Andrea Castillo. In fact, the notes I'll be using are in Spanish. I'm going to see how that works to kind of go back and forth. But we found it an extraordinarily rich teaching, and one that, although lesser known, is very powerful. And it seems to me that it's a good way, maybe a good practice to prepare for the holiday season coming down upon us. And so in putting together a plan for the week here on my iPad this morning, and this will be shared by the people who organize the talks and the guided meditation, so no reason to write it down. Today I'll introduce the six sense spheres practice and how it sits among the teachings. Tomorrow, we'll talk about sights and sounds in the guided meditation, and then seeing and hearing, tactics and techniques. How we can see clearly, how we can observe when seeing becomes observing and watching, or sounds become noise. That's a way to guide us in how to work with our experience in a way that's free and freeing. Wednesday, we'll talk about delights of the season. Not trying to get too cute here, but I started thinking about the season we're entering. Delights of the season, scents and flavors. So we'll talk a little bit about the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and how to interact with the world through these senses in a way, again, that leaves us a middle path between ascetic practices of pushing everything away that's pleasurable, and that is sort of an ascetic approach or an indulgent approach that might have us eating too much chocolate or similar. Thursday, the guided meditation will be called Home for the Holidays, and this will be about touch, including proprioception and interoception. If you haven't heard about those senses, Thursday I'll talk more about those senses related to our sense of touch, how we create a home in our body and our body in the world. And then Friday, keeping freedom in mind, this idea of a sixth sense, and keeping freedom in mind intends a sort of a double meaning, that we keep it in mind like we keep the breath in mind, but that also we find ways to help the mind touch in with freedom at all times. So that's a game plan. And so today I'll say something about the six sense bases and sort of where they sit in the practices. Interestingly, among the practices of the Satipatthana Sutta, the important discourse on the ways in which we can establish mindfulness, sort of hidden in the fourth section, the fourth foundation of mindfulness presented in that discourse, is this practice on the six sense bases. And it has this important middle position between two practices associated with suffering, the five hindrances, the five aggregates, and two practices associated with freedom, the seven factors of awakening and the Four Noble Truths. So, as Gil has pointed out, it has this kind of pivotal position. And I just mentioned two ways in which it's pivotal. One is that it combines mind and body in a very interesting way. It recognizes the embodied nature of our experience. The second way in which it's pivotal is the way that it points us in our practice from the approach that we take, or the concern we have with suffering, and orients us. It creates a momentum toward practices in which the flavor of freedom, the experience of a mind that's free in our life, it becomes more the orientation. So the basic sort of idea in this practice is that we can be attentive to what's happening whenever we experience something, whether it be through sight, through touch, through taste, through smell, the mind, that we can be aware that there's a technical term that is in the text, is that a triad arises. There's a sensory organ, an eye, that's, in the case of an eye, that's functioning, that's working. There's an eye, there's an object. I'm going to point to this lamp behind my head. And somewhere mysteriously between the two arises a consciousness of sight, an eye consciousness, or a consciousness of sight. And these three things come together to create the experience of something. And in that relationship, which begins as a simple relationship between the eye and object, and some knowing of this experience of seeing something. In this simple relationship, there can develop a knot, or what's sometimes in the classic translations referred to as a fetter or a shackle. There's a way in which we're tied to these things through this experience of an I meeting an object and creating, or they're being created, they're arising some sort of awareness of the seeing of an object. A big part of this practice is right here, that we can be aware of two things that are happening here. One is that each of these three pieces of this triad, the I, the lamp in my example, and the consciousness that arises dependent on them, each of these things is impermanent. Each of these things is changing, the I, the lamp, and the consciousness. So when we bring attention to this relationship that's happening, we're touching up against one of the very important things that we come to be aware of in our practices, the way that experience arises in these multiply dependent and impermanent ways. We can also be aware of the knot forming. A relationship, I like to think of it maybe as a bit of a spectrum, or sometimes as a process, although it can happen instantaneously, where this relationship begins simply as just a relationship. It then can become a knot, gets a little tangled up when I want that lamp, or I wish it were on, or I wish this little distracting thing over my shoulder were out of the picture. There can be if there's a wanting of a lamp, there's some wanting happening. If there's not liking this thing over my shoulder, which I'll fix tomorrow, by tomorrow, maybe, there's aversion happening. So in what was a simple relationship, there's something complicated happening. And when this happens, when this knot happens in experience, there's a holding happening. There's something that's just flowing in time, and the process of the knot arising has stopped it in time, because the holidays are coming, and because we just went through Thanksgiving. I was reminded of this, that a lot of pictures were snapped the other day, I noticed, in my little fellowship. And those pictures were later shared on a Google Drive, or maybe some other way shared. I'm sure some were posted on Instagram and the like. And as that happens, you can see that this reminded me that what happens here is a stopping of time. If there's a involvement with the sense spheres, there's a way in which we've stepped out of the flow of time, we've stopped things, and we're trying to hold on to them in a way. So in a way, the whole trick of the six sense bases practice, as we'll explore more during the week, is to recognize the knots that develop and then let them go. And particularly when we look at the sense of touch, there's a really quite wonderful practice that is called touching and letting go, so that in all our experiences, we can have this experience of touching an experience, touching the world around us, knowing it, enjoying it, and yet also letting go of it, letting it go, and maintaining our awareness in the flow of time, where we can be free. So to summarize, and this is sort of a general and theoretical introduction, we'll get sort of tactical and technical tomorrow and take a look at each of the senses beginning tomorrow, each of the six senses in turn, in different combinations. But in closing for today, someone once asked the Buddha about these knots that develop, about how we get caught up in our experience in a way that brings us out of the flow of experience and gets us stuck. and attached and connected and wanting or pushing away. And suffering in this way. Someone asked the Buddha once, in this world that's caught up in these knots, who can untie these knots? Who can dissolve these knots? In this world that seems to be bound up in knots, who can untie the knots? And the Buddha says essentially that someone who's practicing sincerely, someone who has cultivated mindful attention to their experience, someone who remains dedicated and committed to their practice can untie these knots. So this is a really promising message that we can do this, you can do this, that it's possible to be in the world in a way that avoids extremes of ascetic pushing away or indulgent overindulgence, and leaves us free in the middle to experience the world, enjoy the world, and yet not find ourselves suffering in the world. So that's our game plan for the week. I hope you'll join me in this exploration. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a nice preparation for whatever holidays you celebrate coming up. And far beyond that, this way of dipping into the Satipatthana Sutta, the practice of mindfulness, to a key practice that moves us from an orientation towards suffering toward an orientation to what it's like to be free in the world. So till tomorrow, take care. And I'm going to read people's sign-offs for the next few minutes, and then I'll close out. But take care, and may the benefit of our coming together today, may it be shared among many beings. May you take the peace or stillness, calm that you find in the meditation, may you take it out with you into the world so that it can be there when you interact with others. May all beings be free. May all beings know safety, security. May all beings be whole in body and mind. May all beings be free. Take care till tomorrow.